The stars were silent, endless, and cold. Ships of fire moved across the black ocean, but none of them carried human flags. Humanity had been dismissed, written off by those who ruled the stars. The Galactic Union called Earth primitive, a backwater world not worth attention. To them, humans were children with sticks, too weak to survive in a galaxy full of empires. So they ignored Earth, left it behind, and went on with their endless wars. But humanity never stopped watching. Never stopped listening. On a quiet night in orbit around Jupiter, a single listening station caught the first whisper. It was not a friendly sound. It was a fleet, massive, heavy, hungry. Alien ships moved like shadows, blocking stars as they came. The signal was hidden, coded, buried in static, but the humans who listened were stubborn. They found the pattern, they decoded the whispers, and they understood the truth. Someone was coming. Not for humans. Not yet. But for the Union. Captain Elias Brand stood in the dark command center, staring at the repeating signal. His crew was young, most of them had never seen war. Earth had no great fleets, no grand weapons, only scraps of steel and courage. But Elias felt something rise in his chest as he looked at the cold numbers. Fear, yes, but also fire. They don't see us, he whispered. His second-in-command turned to him, confused. Sir, they don't see us. To the Union, we are invisible. To these invaders, we are nothing. That's our chance. The words hung heavy in the air. No one replied. Out the windows, Jupiter's storms boiled like red fire. Humanity was small, but storms could grow from nothing, and even the largest empire could fall when it stopped looking over its shoulder. In the dark halls of Earth's hidden bunkers, leaders gathered. Not presidents or kings, but scientists, generals, and workers who had spent years building in silence. They had been called dreamers, fools, paranoid lunatics. But now, the galaxy's indifference had become humanity's shield. The Union laughed at Earth ships, calling them crude metal coffins. But inside those steel coffins, humans had learned to fight without rules. They had learned to build weapons from scrap, to twist technology into shapes no other species dared imagine. Where others followed law, humans followed survival. And survival was about to become war. The invaders came like a storm. Their ships were dark blades cutting through starlight. They tore through Union fleets in silence, not pausing, not hesitating. Worlds burned, colonies fell, and still the Union called humanity primitive. They did not ask for help. They did not think humans could help. But the signals reached Earth anyway. Every destroyed colony, every burning fleet, every scream carried through the stars, and humanity listened. Elias Brand's ship was the first to follow. A single destroyer, armed with weapons no one had seen before, slipped into the darkness. The crew spoke little. They were afraid, but there was something else in their eyes, something sharp, something hungry. They knew this was madness. They also knew they would not stop. The destroyer moved close to the invader fleet, unseen, ignored. The aliens did not even scan for human signatures. Why would they? Humanity was nothing to them. And that nothingness became a weapon. Elias stood in the silence, watching the shadows of alien ships fill the screen. They were enormous, bigger than cities, their armor black and alive with shifting light. They looked like gods, untouchable and eternal. But Elias felt his hands tighten into fists. "Ready the spear," he said. The weapon was untested, a wild idea born in a lab no one believed in. It was not elegant, not clean, not beautiful. It was human, ugly, brutal, desperate. A weapon made from broken pieces of science, stitched together with stubbornness and rage. The crew armed it. The ship groaned as power drained into the weapon's heart. The lights flickered, systems screamed, but the weapon came alive. The alien fleet moved past, ignoring the small human ship. "Now," Elias said. The spear fired. It was not light, not plasma, not anything the galaxy had seen before. It was a blade of compressed force, tearing reality as it flew. It struck the alien warship in the heart. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the giant cracked like glass. Silence. The invaders paused. For the first time, they turned. The human crew stared at the burning wreck. Their weapon had worked. A ship bigger than a city had fallen, and the galaxy would never laugh again. Elias felt the weight of it. Humanity had been invisible, ignored, dismissed. But not anymore. "They'll see us now," he whispered. Out there in the dark, the alien fleet shifted, slow and cold. Countless eyes turned toward the single human destroyer, and for the first time in history, the galaxy noticed Earth. And it began. The alien warship burned in silence, its broken body drifting among the stars. Flames licked across its shattered hull, spilling glowing fragments into the void. For the first time, the invaders hesitated. They were a fleet of shadows, used to crushing every enemy with ease. But now one of their own lay dead, destroyed by something they had not even noticed. Inside the human destroyer, no one moved. The crew stared at the screens, watching the wreckage twist and collapse. Their breaths were shallow, hearts loud in their chests. They had done the impossible, but none of them dared celebrate. Captain Elias Brand stood in the command chair, his jaw tight. He knew what was coming. "They see us now," he said softly. And they did. The alien fleet turned, hundreds of ships shifting their formation. Their movements were slow, careful, like predators adjusting to a new kind of prey. They had destroyed Union fleets without pause, without thought. But this was different. Something had just wounded them. Something small. Something human. The sensors screamed as the alien ships locked on. "They're scanning us," the science officer whispered. For the first time, the invaders looked at humanity. Their beams of light swept over the destroyer, tearing through its systems, analyzing every piece of steel. The crew winced as the ship shook under the pressure. They could almost feel the alien minds pressing against them, cold and endless. Then came the first shot. A blast of energy ripped through space, aimed at the human destroyer. Elias gave the order before anyone could panic. "Evasive." The small ship twisted, engines roaring as it spun away. The alien beam missed, but only barely. Heat washed across the hull, and alarms filled the bridge. Another shot. Then another. The destroyer was small, but small meant fast. It danced between the fire of giants, slipping through cracks in their formation. Every second alive was stolen time. The crew fought to keep control. Sparks flew from consoles, lights flickered, and sweat ran down faces. They had made the galaxy notice them, and now the galaxy wanted them dead. "Charge the spear again," Elias ordered. The crew hesitated. The weapon was unstable, dangerous, barely held together. Firing it once had nearly torn the ship apart. But hesitation was a luxury they no longer had. "Yes, sir," the weapons officer said, fear in his voice. The ship groaned as power drained once more. Systems dimmed, engines slowed, and for a moment the destroyer became a dying ember in the void. The aliens closed in, their shadows tightening like a net. "Not yet," Elias said, eyes locked on the screen. The aliens surrounded them, massive warships shifting into position. They were ready to crush this insect, to erase the insult from memory. "Not yet." The ship trembled. The weapon's core burned hot. The crew held their breath, waiting for the order. And then Elias gave it. "Now." The spear fired. A blade of force tore across the darkness, brighter this time, faster, sharper. It cut through the closest alien ship, slicing its armor open like paper. The explosion lit up the fleet, scattering debris across the void. But the weapon was hungry. The destroyer screamed as systems overloaded. Consoles burst, smoke filled the bridge, and the lights went dark. For a heartbeat, everything was silence. Then backup power flickered on. The crew gasped for air, coughing, eyes burning from the smoke. The ship was alive, but broken. "Damage report," Elias shouted. "Engines at 30%. Shields failing. Weapon offline, came the reply. They had destroyed another alien giant, but at a terrible cost. They were trapped, weak, floating in the middle of a fleet that was still countless strong. The aliens hesitated again. Not from fear, but from something colder: calculation. These humans were strange. Their ship was crude, their weapons unstable, their tactics reckless. Yet somehow, they had destroyed 2 warships in less than 10 minutes. The fleet pulled back, ships shifting into a wider circle. They were no longer rushing to kill. They were studying, watching. Elias sat in silence, his chest heaving. His crew looked to him, their faces pale but burning with the same fire. "We're not dead yet," he said. "And if we're not dead, we're still a problem." The words were quiet, but they carried through the smoke and fear. The aliens did not attack. Not immediately. They waited, watching the crippled human ship limp through the stars. The silence was worse than gunfire. It was the silence of hunters who had just discovered prey that might bite back. And far away, beyond the battlefield, the Union finally noticed. Their long-range sensors caught the battle. They saw the explosions, the broken alien warships, and the single human destroyer standing against a fleet. For the first time in history, Union worlds whispered the name of Earth. Primitive. Crude. Ignored. But not anymore. The galaxy had turned its eyes toward humanity. And humanity, broken but unbowed, stared back. The destroyer limped through the dark, its hull scarred and bleeding sparks. The stars ahead looked cold, like eyes that offered no comfort. Inside, the crew worked in silence, patching what they could, knowing it was not enough. Their ship was alive, but only just. Captain Elias Brand sat in his chair, staring at the drifting wreckage of the alien warship they had destroyed. It was still burning, pieces breaking apart and scattering like dying embers. The victory felt hollow. The fleet was still out there, watching, waiting. The aliens had not attacked again. That silence was more terrifying than their weapons. It was the silence of minds that were learning. They had expected to crush humans in seconds. Now, they were curious. "Sir," the science officer said, voice unsteady, "their formation is shifting again. They're holding distance." "They're testing us," Elias replied. His voice was low, tired, but steady. "They want to see if we can do it again." The crew exchanged uneasy looks. They knew the truth. The weapon was gone. The spear had eaten everything the ship had left. They could not fire it again, not without tearing themselves apart. Yet the aliens did not know that. The destroyer crawled away from the battlefield, engines groaning. Every shadow behind them was an enemy ship. The crew could feel the weight of alien eyes pressing against them. And somewhere far away, the Union finally stirred. On a shining world at the heart of the Union, diplomats and admirals stared at the data streams. They saw the impossible, a primitive human vessel standing against a fleet that had shattered whole armadas. They argued in disbelief. Some called it a trick, a lie. Others demanded answers. But whispers spread faster than orders. Across the Union, soldiers in broken fleets spoke the name Earth with something they had not felt in years: hope. The invaders had crushed them without mercy. Their fleets had been torn apart. But if even one tiny human ship could kill the giants, then maybe the war was not lost. Back on the destroyer, the crew worked with bleeding hands. Engineers crawled through smoke-filled corridors, sealing leaks, restarting dead systems. Sparks burned their skin, but no one stopped. "We'll give them nothing," Elias said. His eyes were sharp now, filled with the fire of survival. "They think we can strike again. So let them believe it." The science officer turned, confused. "Sir, bluff them? Against a fleet that size?" Elias almost smiled, but there was no humor in it. "It's what we've always done. On Earth. In every war. When we had nothing, we pretended to have everything. And sometimes, pretending is enough." The crew understood. They had grown up on a world where survival meant tricks, risks, and lies as much as weapons. They could not fight the fleet head-on, but they could make the aliens doubt. So the destroyer kept moving, slow and broken, but always facing outward, always keeping its nose toward the enemy. Every sensor ping, every engine flare was carefully shaped to look like strength. The humans painted the illusion of a ship ready to strike again. And the aliens, for all their size and power, hesitated. Hours passed. Days, maybe. Time lost meaning in the silence of space. The alien fleet shadowed them, always present, never striking. Watching. On the third day, the Union finally sent a signal. It was weak, broken, filled with static. But the message was clear: human vessel, identify yourself. How did you destroy them? The crew listened in silence. 4 years, the Union had called Earth primitive. 4 years, they had ignored every attempt at contact. Now, with their fleets in ruins, they asked for help. Elias listened to the words. His crew looked at him, waiting for his response. He thought of Earth, its crowded cities, its struggling people, its endless wars. A planet that had been told it was too weak, too backward, too small. And he thought of the burning wreckage outside, proof that even the smallest world could strike down giants. He opened the channel. His voice was steady, iron under the static. This is the destroyer Valiant. Humanity fights for survival, like all of you. We were dismissed as primitive. That was your mistake. But now we fight back. The Union ships listened. Across the stars, desperate commanders leaned closer, hearing a voice they could not ignore. And in the silence after his words, the alien fleet shifted again. Dozens of ships broke formation, moving ahead of the others. They were not retreating. They were not curious anymore. They were preparing to strike. The crew braced. Their bluff had held for days, but it could not hold forever. Engines at 35%, the pilot said quietly. Shields? Elias asked. Barely there. The captain nodded slowly. His eyes locked on the massive ships closing in. They were about to die. But if they were to die, they would make the galaxy remember. Then we'll show them one more trick, he whispered. The crew tensed. Their hands hovered over dead weapons, broken systems. They did not know what he meant, but they trusted him. And as the alien fleet closed in for the kill, Elias Brand began the most dangerous gamble of his life. The alien ships closed in like a tightening fist. Their shadows blocked the stars, their weapons charged with silent light. The human destroyer Valiant floated in the middle, broken and weak, pretending to be strong. The bluff had worked for days, but now the predators were done waiting. On the bridge, the crew prepared for the end. Faces were pale, hands shaking, but no one moved from their stations. They had seen what their weapon could do. They had already written themselves into history. But history was rarely kind to the first to fight. Captain Elias Brand stared at the incoming ships. His heart beat slow, steady, louder than the alarms. He knew his destroyer could not win this battle. But perhaps there was still a way to twist defeat into something larger. How many Union channels are open? He asked. Hundreds, the comm officer said. They're watching everything. Elias nodded. That was the key. The Valiant was not only a ship anymore. It was a message. Then let's show them how humans die, he said. The crew understood. It was not despair in their eyes. It was resolve. If they were going to be destroyed, they would do it in a way that made the galaxy remember. The aliens fired first. A beam of energy ripped across the void, striking the Valiant's weakened shields. The ship shook violently, lights flashing, smoke bursting from consoles. Engineers scrambled, sealing ruptures with their bare hands. Another blast followed, then another. The destroyer staggered, groaning like a wounded beast. Engines failing, the pilot shouted. Hold them together, Elias ordered. His voice was calm, almost too calm. The Valiant turned its nose toward the nearest alien ship, as if preparing to strike again. But the truth was cruel. The spear weapon was dead, burned out after the last shot. All they had left were scraps, minds, and tricks. The aliens did not know. They slowed their fire, testing, watching. They wanted to see if the humans would unleash the impossible weapon again. "Sir," the science officer said, voice low. "They're hesitating." "Good," Elias replied. "Then we'll make them think twice." He gave the order. The crew activated every remaining weapon, railguns, missiles, even point defense cannons. It was a storm of fire, nothing compared to the alien arsenal, but it was loud, desperate, furious. The Valiant spat metal and flame into the void, and for a moment, it looked unstoppable. The alien ships shifted, shields flaring as they absorbed the human barrage. Most of the weapons did little damage, but one missile slipped through and struck a cruiser's flank. The explosion was small, but the effect was greater. It proved humans were still dangerous. The aliens pulled back slightly, confused, cautious. And across the stars, Union ships watched with wide eyes. They had expected the Valiant to fall in silence. Instead, they saw a crippled human vessel spitting fire against impossible odds, refusing to bow. For the first time in years, they saw resistance that did not end in surrender. "Broadcast everything," Elias ordered. "Every shot, every word." "Yes, sir," the comm officer said, tears burning his eyes. The next blast struck harder. The Valiant's shields collapsed, armor tearing open. A section of the hull ripped away, sucking air and screams into the void. The crew held on, fighting against terror. "We're losing decks 4 and 5. Seal them. Keep firing." The destroyer was breaking apart, but it kept moving, kept shooting, kept showing the galaxy that humans did not die quietly. Another explosion ripped through the engines. The ship lurched, spinning. Sparks rained across the bridge. The weapons officer turned, blood running down his face. "We have one last missile left." Elias looked at him, then at the screen filled with alien giants. His jaw tightened. "Send it," he said. The last missile streaked into the darkness, weaving between alien fire. It struck the damaged cruiser again, exploding deep inside its wound. The ship broke apart in a burst of fire. Another alien giant fell. The bridge erupted in cheers, raw and defiant. They knew they were about to die, but they had taken 3 of the monsters with them. The alien fleet froze. Their weapons still glowed, their numbers still overwhelming, but they hesitated again. Something was shifting in their cold minds. These humans were not like the others. And in that hesitation, Union commanders spoke. Across dozens of channels, voices filled with disbelief and anger began to argue. If humans could kill 3 ships with nothing but scraps, what could the Union do if they fought alongside them? Elias heard none of it. He stood at the center of the storm, his ship dying around him. His thoughts were only of Earth. If the Valiant's death lit a fire across the galaxy, then maybe humanity had a chance. Another alien beam struck. The bridge shook violently, panels falling from the ceiling. Half the crew were thrown from their seats. The lights went dark again. "Sir," the pilot whispered through blood, "we can't take another hit." Elias looked at his crew. Exhausted, wounded, still ready. He gave a slow nod. "Then we'll make our last move count." The alien ships charged their weapons again, energy building brighter than suns. The Valiant floated broken, but not silent. Inside, humans prepared to gamble everything one final time. And far away, across the galaxy, millions of eyes watched. For the first time, the Union saw humanity not as primitives, but as warriors. The shot came. And the Valiant answered. The shot that came should have ended them. The alien beam was vast, white and blinding, swallowing the Valiant whole. On Union worlds, millions watching believed they had just seen humanity's last breath. The screen went white, and for a moment, there was nothing. But the Valiant was still there. The destroyer tumbled, torn and burning, half its hull ripped away. Fires raged through the corridors, oxygen venting into space. Yet somehow, against all reason, the ship clung to life. On the bridge, smoke choked the air. The crew struggled at their posts, coughing, bleeding, but not leaving. Captain Elias Brand dragged himself to his chair, his arm hanging limp, blood soaking his uniform. "We're still alive," he said. His voice was raw, but steady. The crew looked at him, eyes wide with disbelief. They were broken, but not gone. And outside, the alien fleet hesitated again. The beam should have ended the human ship, but the Valiant had endured. Even crippled, it refused to die. In that moment, the Union saw more than survival. They saw defiance. They saw a spark. Across a dozen worlds, officers and soldiers stood straighter. Civilians in crowded shelters whispered the word, human. For the first time, they believed the invaders could be hurt. But the Valiant could not endure much longer. Systems were failing everywhere. Power was gone. The weapon was destroyed. Engines barely responded. "Sir," the science officer said, voice trembling. We can't fight anymore." Elias nodded slowly. He knew. But there was still one thing they could do. "How close are they?" he asked. "Too close," the pilot replied. His face was pale, his hands shaking. Elias leaned forward. "Then we make sure they regret it." The crew understood. It was the oldest human tactic. When you had nothing left, you turned yourself into a weapon. The order spread through the ship. Engineers sealed bulkheads, redirected every drop of power into the engines. The destroyer groaned as if it knew what was coming. "Collision course," Elias said. The bridge fell silent. No one argued. No one hesitated. The Valiant turned slowly, dragging its broken frame toward the largest alien ship. The enemy fired again, beams lashing across the void, but still the destroyer came. Union fleets watching the transmission erupted with shouts, curses, prayers. They saw what was happening, and their blood burned. If a single broken human ship could ram a giant, then perhaps their own broken fleets could rise again. The alien flagship loomed larger on the screen. Its surface shimmered with strange light, armor thick and endless. It was a god among ships. "Impact in 30 seconds, the pilot whispered. Elias closed his eyes for one breath. He thought of Earth, of the cities he had walked, of the oceans he had crossed. He thought of a world dismissed as nothing, now standing in the center of history. "Transmit this," he said. His voice was iron. "To every world, every ship. Let them see." "Yes, sir," the calm officer whispered, tears in her eyes. The Valiant roared forward, engines screaming as they burned themselves to death. The alien flagship's weapons flared, striking again and again, tearing more holes in the human ship. But nothing stopped it. 10 seconds. The crew held their breath. Faces calm now, as if fear had burned away. They knew they would not survive. But survival was not the goal anymore. 5 seconds. The alien flagship filled the screen, a wall of black and shifting light. Its weapons glowed, its shields burned, but the destroyer did not turn away. Elias opened his eyes. "For Earth," he said. "Impact." The Valiant struck the alien flagship like a blade. The collision tore through shields, ripped open armor, and drove deep into the ship's core. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the flagship exploded. The blast lit the void brighter than any star. Debris scattered for thousands of kilometers, shredding smaller alien ships in its path. The fleet broke apart, disoriented, shaken. The Union watched in stunned silence. A single human destroyer had destroyed the largest ship in the fleet. Primitive. Weak. Crude. Yet it had struck down a god. The Valiant was gone, its crew lost to fire and light. But their final act had become more than sacrifice. It was a spark that set the galaxy on fire. Across Union worlds, soldiers shouted, civilians wept, commanders raised their fists. The myth of invincibility was broken. The invaders could bleed. And in the cold silence after the blast, a single truth echoed through the stars: humanity had arrived. The wreckage of the alien flagship drifted through space like the corpse of a god. Pieces burned, fragments glowed, and silence pressed against the stars. The fleet that had seemed untouchable now floated in chaos, its formation broken, its pride shattered. The Valiant was gone. Nothing remained of the human destroyer except memory and fire. But that memory spread faster than light. Across the Union, across every listening post, every shattered colony, every broken fleet, the story spread. Humanity had struck down the impossible. And something began to change. On a distant Union outpost, soldiers raised their rifles and cheered. On a world under siege, civilians whispered hope as they crowded around dying screens. Admirals who had once dismissed Earth now leaned forward in their chairs, eyes burning with questions. If humans can kill one, a general muttered, then maybe we can kill more. The invaders felt it too. Their fleet still outnumbered every army, their ships still vast and powerful, but hesitation had entered them like a disease. They had crushed the Union without effort. But now, a primitive species had forced them to bleed. The silence between their ships grew heavy, as if even they were uncertain. Back on Earth, the signal reached the command centers buried deep under mountains. Leaders, scientists, and soldiers watched the last moments of the Valiant. The room was silent when the flagship exploded. Some wept. Others clenched their fists. "They called us primitive," one general whispered. "Let them call us that again." In hidden hangars, ships long kept in secret were uncovered. Weapons that had been called impossible were armed. Earth had prepared in silence for years, building in shadows while the galaxy ignored them. Now, the time for hiding was gone. For the first time, Earth's fleets launched not for defense, but for war. The Union did not know what to make of it. Some called for alliance, desperate to use humanity's fire. Others demanded control, fearing what humans might become. But in the end, the truth was clear: without humanity, the Union was already lost. So messengers were sent. Across broken space lanes, across burning skies, signals reached out. They did not speak in arrogance anymore. They spoke in respect. "Earth," they said, "fight with us. Show us how." On Mars, in orbit around the Red Planet, the first of Earth's war councils was held. Captains, pilots, and engineers gathered in a chamber carved from steel. They were not Union admirals with polished uniforms and flawless ships. They were scarred, tired, fierce. At the center, Admiral Rourke, an old soldier with iron in his eyes, spoke. "The Union laughed at us. The invaders ignored us. That ends now. The Valiant showed the galaxy who we are. We don't run. We don't kneel. We fight." The chamber shook with voices, rough and loud, promising vengeance. Far away, in the ruins of a Union fleet, survivors listened. One captain, her ship scarred and half dead, opened her channel to the humans. "We stand with you," she said. And then another. And another. Across the stars, broken fleets began to turn their ships toward Earth. The Union was no longer a coalition of frightened worlds. Humanity's defiance had lit a fire in them. The invaders felt the shift. Their fleets began to move faster, striking harder, as if trying to crush the spark before it grew. Colonies burned. Planets fell. The galaxy trembled. But for the first time, there was an answer. Human ships, crude but fierce, slipped into battles. They struck where no one expected, hit hard, vanished into shadows. They were not stronger, but they were unpredictable. They were dangerous. And every time they struck, Union ships followed. Confidence grew. Fleets that had been scattered began to reform, gathering under a banner they had once ignored. The banner of Earth. Yet victory was still far away. The invaders were endless. Their fleets were still larger than anything the Union could build. And somewhere deeper in the dark, something greater stirred, an armada even larger, moving toward the galaxy's heart. In a war room on Earth, Admiral Rourke stood over a map of stars. Red marks showed every fallen world. Blue lights showed every Union fleet that still fought. The galaxy looked broken. At his side, scientists explained their last secret. The weapon that had armed the Valiant, the spear of force, was only the beginning. If humanity had time, if the Union gave them resources, they could build more. Bigger. Stronger. Weapons that could turn fleets to dust. But time is short, one of them said. The next wave is coming. Rourke stared at the map. He thought of the Valiant, of Elias Brand, of the crew who had died showing the galaxy what humans could do. We'll be ready, he said. His voice was stone. If they want war, we'll give them war. The council rose. Orders were given. Fleets prepared. Across Earth, Mars, and the colonies, humanity forged itself into a weapon. And far away, in the black void where stars seemed to die, the second armada of the invaders arrived. The galaxy would never be the same. The second armada was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was endless, stretching across the dark like a wall of moving stars. Their ships were larger, sharper, hungrier. The first wave had been a spear. This was the hammer meant to finish the galaxy. Union fleets trembled when the scans came in. Whole worlds prepared for silence. Some whispered it was already over. No one had ever stood against so much power. But then came the signal. It was not from a Union world. Not from an old admiral or a council chamber. It was from Earth. The voice of Admiral Rourke carried across the stars, low and hard, every word wrapped in iron. They call us primitive. They call us weak. Let them. But remember this. One human ship destroyed their god. One crew showed them fear. And now, we are not one ship. We are a fleet. We are a people. We are humanity. The word spread through every channel, carried into every heart. Union soldiers clenched their fists. Civilians raised their heads. And across the invaders' armada, the silence of predators grew heavier. The final battle began. The invaders came like a storm, dark ships tearing across space with cold precision. Their beams lit the void, ripping through Union lines. Planets shook as bombardments fell. It was war on a scale no one had ever seen. But this time, the Union did not break. Human ships darted between giants, small and fast, striking at weak points the Union had never seen before. Missiles screamed, railguns tore, mines exploded in the dark. And behind every human strike, Union ships followed, hammering the wounds open. Together, they fought. A Union cruiser and a human frigate dove side by side into a swarm of enemy craft, their combined fire shredding the smaller hunters. A human carrier, patched together from scrap, unleashed drones that tore through an enemy battleship's engines. For the first time, the invaders faltered. On the bridge of Earth's flagship, the Resolute, Admiral Rourke watched the battle unfold. His eyes were hard, his hands steady. "Bring the spear online," he ordered. In the heart of the ship, a weapon larger than anything built before roared awake. It was the child of the Valiant's sacrifice, perfected with Union technology and human defiance. A spear not for one ship, but for an armada. The Resolute aimed at the center of the enemy fleet. Energy built, reality trembling under the strain. Fire. The spear screamed into the void, brighter than a sun. It tore through the enemy lines, ripping 3 massive warships apart in a single strike. Shockwaves shattered others. The galaxy shook. Cheers filled the Union fleets. The impossible was happening. The armada was bleeding. But the enemy did not die quietly. They struck back, harder than ever. Dozens of beams converged on the Resolute. Shields cracked, armor burned. The ship shook as if the universe itself was breaking. "Hold steady," Rourke roared. The Resolute endured, its hull screaming, its crew fighting fire and fear alike. Around it, Union ships threw themselves into the path of enemy fire, shielding the flagship with their own lives. This was no longer Earth against the galaxy. This was the galaxy standing together. Hours turned to days. The battle spread across systems, every star burning with fire. The invaders still outnumbered them, but their rhythm was broken. They were predators who had never faced prey that fought back together. And humanity never stopped striking. Small ships rammed giants. Broken fleets lit themselves as traps. Every death was turned into a weapon. At last, the invaders began to fall back. One by one, their formations cracked. The Second Armada, meant to crush everything, was breaking under fire it had never imagined. On the bridge of the Resolute, silence filled the air as the last of the enemy ships detonated, vanishing into the dark. The stars were quiet again. The Union had survived. The crew stared at the screens, unable to believe. The war was not over. No one knew if more fleets would come, but for the first time, the galaxy had pushed back the darkness. Rourke stood tall, his voice calm. Signal every world. Tell them the invincible have fallen. Tell them humanity stands. And across the stars, the message spread. On Earth, people flooded the streets, cheering through tears. On Union worlds, soldiers raised their banners. Children who had lived their whole lives in fear looked at the sky with wonder. The name of the valiant was carved into memory, the spark that had begun it all. And humanity, once dismissed as primitive, now stood as the shield and the spear of the galaxy. The war was not finished. The shadows might return. But from now on, the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. Because humanity had proved a truth older than stars. Dismissed. Ignored. Underestimated. But when pushed to the edge, humanity always struck back.